Welcome to episode 32 of Building Blocks of Print. Today, connect with Too Immersive for You, an organization that is changing how we consume media today. When you think of some of the changes in tech or changes in how content is consumed, you're mostly thinking of 2D to 4K to 8K. But one thing that's consistent is how we frame the picture. It's always on 2D landscape, and there's really no movement. However, as we've seen with the introduction of VR and even the use of mobile phones for generating and viewing content, users are now able to move around. If you even look on YouTube right now, you can see that there's some options for what it's called 360 video. Too Immersive for You is trying to create content developed for that platform, whether it be 360 or a little bit shorter in the 180 view. They work with musicians, animes, content creators to help storyboard, create, and develop a video made for that 3D space. One of the challenges with any new business or any new tech is trying to educate consumers on how to use the medium. When you're thinking of a video, typically you're thinking of really how to frame the shot. But when it comes to moving around, a lot of things have changed. Over the podcast, we talk about some of the challenges, but some of the benefits that come with being able to move your camera around. One of the challenges, for example, is that if someone's telling a story, your user may be looking way over there and not knowing what's going on. However, being able to move the camera allows for a much more interactive and also allows for content creators to have Easter eggs like never before. Over this episode, we go over how they were to start the business, some of their goals and missions for 5 years out, but also how they're able to work with customers to change what we consider a video to be. Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. Check out some of their content as it's truly entertaining and a really new viewing experience. And check out Too Immersive for You to see some of their upcoming projects they're working on. Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode.
We started earlier, like January, when COVID started, 2020. I think my name is Dusan, and I'm the CEO of Too Immersive, and this is Filip. Hi, president of Too Immersive. And how we started is I have a background in music. I had a band, and I have produced music around 10 years prior to this. Also, I had bachelor's degree in audio video technologies. And when COVID hit, I was like, well, maybe this is an opportunity for something else. While I was at my friend's house, we were like doing music, and I was like, hey man, let's check out how is there any like 360 video out there on the internet. And at the time it was like Gorillas and a couple of more artists. And after that, like I saw the opportunity, like, this is interesting. Let's start from here. But like, what's the next step? Like how to be entrepreneur, how to, how to educate yourself in that digital space and so on. So I figured out there is a local hub here in Belgrade, and there was some digital transformation course. And I went there, and that's where I met actually Philip. Philip was doing the speech, and he was my mentor after the course. And when we started talking, not just about music, about tech and other stuff, I was like, this guy's brilliant. Like, how old are you, man? Like 25, 26? And he was 19 at the time. And I was like, I need to work with this guy, right? So I declined NASA contractor for that year because one of the co-founders is NASA engineer, and so he helped me apply it there. And I was like, nah, let's start this with this like amazing team, man.
Yeah.
That's like how we came to be.
And kind of when you were starting out, I know you said a little bit of a music background. Was the idea to create content for music videos, and is that how it started? Like really with a focus much more on music?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I actually like the first thing we ever did was the demo on band that I'm in. That's how we started. Like let's experiment on ourselves. So, but as soon as we started working with Philip and started that process of digital, not just digital business transformation, and how can we pivot and do something else, things started to be a little bit more. They started to a little bit more clear, let's say like that.
Yeah, it was. What is funny is that actually COVID was both a curse and both a blessing for something like this. It was a curse because many of the bands lost their main sources of income, and like making new music videos was not an investment they would make. We actually spoke with a couple of musicians that we personally really like and respect, and it was a great feeling. But when we were talking to them, we really figured out that there isn't really a market there right now for something like this. But what it helped us look is the grander overall vision, because it started as like, let's produce 360 videos for musicians, let's create these music videos, let's create something fun. But then we figured out that actually 360 and 180 as a whole is unexplored area. And when we went out and when we started like talking to users, doing some market research and stuff, we found out that actually you won't believe it, but more people actually watch VR stuff on their mobile phones and computers than they watch it through their VR headsets. When you look at the adoption curve, you actually see that like out of 59 million, I think, VR users in the US right now, like almost 30 million of them are watching the stuff without the VR headset. So we started exploring that space, and we really wanted to create a process that would enable us as a company to create more compelling storytelling experiences. And in there, we combined like traditional movie elements with like VR and 360, so we can create this blended video experience that we deliver to you as a customer, which is really cool. But I think that in general, it is not just 360 and 180. It's the video as a whole. I think there's yet more possibilities. So when you go and when you look like the history of video as technology itself, especially in the recent years, we see that the video is probably and is most popular type of the content. But as like lengths change, base of production change, but there really haven't been any like substantial improvements in the video experience itself in the last couple of years. When you think about TikTok, when you think about other stuff, it is just changing the current formula and fitting it into another context. So we really saw that as an area that we can explore, not just as to immersive, but as entrepreneurs.
And that's so true. You're so right. How the really video has been very similar for such a long time. Like you said, the amount of time. I mean, Vine came out to 7 seconds, and then Instagram video, now TikTok, and all that really is different ways of consuming a very similar medium. But the medium hasn't changed too much. I guess, like you're saying, the VR obviously brought the 360 elements to it, but which I found interesting as well, because I was early on in the VR game. I got the Oculus like day one. It was very fun for a week, and then since then, I've only ever done 360 video, mostly through my phone, because first of all, the computer processing power became a little bit challenging, and also I always get scared when I was wearing a whole VR headset and someone walk into your room. So I'm like, I'm gonna get attacked. This is intensive, but it was such a unique medium. I had like everyone try it out, and like what you were saying, it was a different way of enjoying content that really had a different layer to it. So when you start working with these musicians and these bands, obviously, because it's a new medium, how you storyboard and develop the content, I'm assuming is a little bit different, because you're not just focusing on a 2D image to say, okay, we need this in the background, we need this over here. When you work with a band, do you work with them through storyboarding, or do they tend to come to you with a story and then you create it? How does that creative process work?
Well, it definitely depends on the artist. We like, because this is something that you can, with every new project, you're basically doing a little research, right? Not like they have their certain vision as an artist, and you will definitely try to fit that into this new concept. But as we go, before we start to render, there is always something that you can change, way of directing, maybe something else. The process is, we definitely start with the storyboard and the story. First of all, the story needs to be something that artists like. And if we nail that, then we go into the process of storyboarding. We do a little bit of pre-wiz, where they can see like the storyboard in 2D motion, like the timing, framing, and such things. After that, after we develop the characters, we like to stay in contact with artists to see like, are they the heroes they like? Will they do the story right for the narrative and such? And yeah, we all kinds of approaches here are like
Mm-hmm.
welcomed in our world, but this is something that we do like step by step, that is necessary for the process to be fast. The thing that we also like, we think we do like really good, it's the optimization of the whole process, because something like this, in the start when we watch like how Google did it and how much time and people they need,
Mhm.
and we were like, let's try to do this in 3 months, and we can
Mhm.
do it in 3 months, and I think now even less. So
Mhm.
we,
Yeah,
we
and
know,
mhm.
this is the thing, we know about animation, that you can always enhance the animation, but what we wanted to tackle is new kind of directing, where we can, not just do that point of view that you mentioned,
Mhm.
like in Oculus space,
Mhm.
right? You just do like the point of view and that's it. You don't have breaking that first person
Mhm.
thing. You don't play with frames, you don't play with angles, so we're still searching, but I think we're on a good track.
Mhm. Oh, for sure. And I think it's so important, like you were saying, is that it's not only the technology that it's important, it's having all those steps before working with your customer, working with the individual, just because as you know, when it comes to rendering and near the final stage of any project, no matter whether it be video, movie, anything else, it gets harder to make
Mhm.
changes. So I like
Yeah,
how you were touching on, like, hey, the first step of the process is having that conversation, understanding the needs, then storyboarding, then giving clips, then finally creating. And I think that's so important, because I think with many entrepreneurs in any industry, they always want to show you the final product. They're like, hey, this is so cool,
yeah,
we think this is great, here you go. And when it comes to anything creative, half like a lot of the times,
true.
even if it's the coolest thing, looks the prettiest, the customer would say, "Oh, that's not what I want." And then you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I spent 3 months on this. What are you saying?" So I like how you touched on, taking going slow allows you to go fast. And I think for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense for a lot of times, because you're like, what do you mean going slow makes you go fast? But making changes early on save you so much time down the road. So I like how you touched on that, because I know even for some simple projects I've worked on, whether it be even implementing a new software in a company, which is 10 times simpler than making any content, it's always been, oh yeah, I think I know what they want. And then spend a week pulling out together a report, and they're like, oh, this is completely wrong. And you're like, I wasted a day. But imagine, wasting months. So it's so important to have that storyboard, having all those set things to work with the customer to get a successful end result.
yeah.
When you so with this, 3D rendering, all this thing, did you have a background and experience in animation and modeling, or was this newer to you when you started this business?
It was definitely new. I loved the idea of directing
Hmm.
always, since I was in the music business. So that was something like close to me. And my uncle, he's he's the photographer,
Hmm.
and so it's something like that's close to me whole life.
Hmm.
And like when we just started thinking about something like this, I like movies, I
Hmm.
like animations in general. Uh, Everyone in the team also
Hmm.
like are really passionate about it, but like to start a first project, everyone thought that I was crazy when I wanted to do it like with 5 people.
Hmm.
And like I will do the story, I can do like the post production, like in editing we can do like After Effects and stuff like that. I know how to do it, but like let's start with something like, let's build an environment,
Hmm.
then let's build the characters, then let's see how what is the process for manual animation or motion capture.
Hmm.
And basically we started from there. Literally started like, after I met Philip, I had the storyboard and concept artist Bogdan with
Hmm.
me, but we still like haven't figured out like who will be like in the team, because some people, you know came and go, and they they wouldn't start something like this because it sounds like a nut house in the
Yeah.
beginning. Like, and then when I like, found passionate people and the people who were ready like to take the risks, like let's try this for like
Hmm.
half a year, like who knows what will happen. We started from there. Then we learned the process, the pipeline, how to enhance it. I did a lot of like courses in the
Hmm.
meantime, for like the business development and stuff. Philip, of
Mhm.
course, helped me a lot about that because Philip had like from like
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
from
a,
15
yeah,
years we were
it's
okay.
really
So
interesting. I would need to go like a little bit in back.
Mhm.
So before Dushan and I met, the way that my career started is that I was, like many other kids in this world, interested in computers.
Mhm.
I was playing video games, and something sparked in me and was like, all right, let's learn how to
Mhm.
creating some computers. So I started learning how to write code, how to develop software. I got actually into a high school which was specialized for that. And at some time when I was like 16 years old, I was already like working on projects with like few of my peers from like school, and we were like supported to the school. We didn't go to classes. They were just like go away and make something, and we were
Wow.
making some stuff. And then like we created a couple of cool projects. But one day, it's really interesting, I was sitting at my home, and I was a typical teenager when I was talking to my parents, and I was like, if I wanted to go and like get a job in the industry, I could. And they were like, we don't believe you. So as every teenager, I wanted to prove them wrong, and they did. I actually went out and I found a Facebook group where they were like people who were giving the jobs in tech
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And I wrote everything I know and was like, I'm looking someone to work with. Actually, like 8 companies contacted me. I
Wow.
choose one, went there, wasn't at the internship, and then decided to just work there full time. And I found a way with school how I don't go to classes and like work full time in the industry. But when I started working, it's actually really interesting. I started working development, and then I found out that like actually working as a software like developer isn't really as you think. It
Mhm.
isn't that creative in a sense, because you're sitting, you're watching board, taking tasks, and you don't really at that level take any like decisions. And I really like that more like creative business part, when you really need to think about what you should build, and actually start to be like interested into innovation, into how like products are made and stuff like that. Started learning all of that, and then it was actually recognized by the company, which took me into an entrepreneurship
Mhm.
project at that time. So now imagine this: you are 70-year old, you are taken into a team with a head of product management, head of software development, and director of like whole IT unit of the
Mhm.
company, and you're tasked to go out and do innovation consulting. So that's exactly what we did. We went out and we created like innovative ideas to transform some of the biggest companies in our market, and that's how I got started. And I was working with that both in the company, both as myself as individual consultant. I
Mhm.
really grew in that field, and then I met Dusan, and it was time to start working on this.
That it's so wild because I know one of the big things always is like you said is trying to always prove your parents wrong is such a big thing. And
Yeah.
funny enough, your story is kind of similar to mine, although I was never successful enough to leave school to get a real job, so I had to end up going to school a few times. But when I was in high school, I wanted to be a computer programmer as well. I thought software engineering was the coolest thing. You could create video games just like any teen boy. I was like, I'll make video games. This is my future. I want to do this. Then it came to like grade, like the final year of high school, and I realized, oh, as a programmer, you're not creating stuff every day. You're typically told, hey, this is the class to figure out. This is the code you have to work on. This is the one aspect of the product you're trying to develop. Your job is just to fix bugs or just figure out that. And I realized very quickly, oh, it's not making video games all day. I can't be as creative as I intended to be. So that's why I went more into the business side as well. So kind of a similar story. Although looking back on it, I do wish I stuck with the programming and software engineering a little bit just to keep that knowledge because I lost everything. It's the opposite of riding a bike. I stopped doing it at completely, and then when I try to go back into it a few years later in university and through my job, I realized I am now completely new to it again. So I know what you were saying in the sense of realizing what your initial career path is,
Mhm.
really what the job is a lot of times quite different than what you actually think it will be. And for me, it was wanting to make video games was not firstly a job they really hired for, where you just made a video game as the only thing, but most importantly, there was other levels or other skill sets required to get
Yeah.
into that world.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. We
So
can't have someone to boss us around. That's
yeah.
not our. That's not in our nature. That can be crucial for
Yeah,
something like entrepreneurship
Hmm.
down the line.
Yeah.
and what's really interesting, I think, now when we touched on the topic of like how people like us progressed,
Hmm.
like with interest to careers. As you see, you start from somewhere. Like Dusan started from music, and he also had like interest in like
Mhm.
animation and video, and that he loved game, and all of us. I think it's really interesting because that happens to the companies also.
Hmm.
The thing is, when you look at the what Too Immersive was at the beginning and how have we grown, I think it's a really magnificent journey in a way that we like started with let's do this for the music industry. We explored like multiple things, multiple industries, and we figured out like what we actually need to do, what we want to do. We did it iterative process, and I think not a lot of people refer it like this, but I like to call it like we basically did R&D, but on the market. Like we
Hmm.
were figuring stuff out while being on the
Yeah.
market, which is something that I think is extremely valuable. Aside from music videos, we actually dealt and still deal in some capacity with marketing content.
Hmm.
We saw that as an opportunity because actually Google, I mean YouTube and Facebook, they offer 360 technology and 180 technology in ads, which means that you can go and you can like put ad that is in 360. Now imagine being a person that is on YouTube and you see like those ads that you see every time, and you're like, oh, this is boring. But now
Yeah.
you see something that is really different and
Hmm.
it is more immersive. So it was something that we were trying to tackle. We had some degree of success there. We actually like when we used our ads, we were achieving like the click-through rate of between like 10 and 12%, which is really great for the YouTube. But it turns out for that like marketing kind of content, that it is a really good use case for 360 for
Hmm.
actually 360 and 180. Another use case which is close to our heart and which we are working extensively right now are the animated shows.
Mhm.
So basically, we use 180 technology. I can elaborate a little bit why, because one of the main issues we found with viewers related to the 360 technology that is consumed outside of VR devices, outside of Oculus, is that not all of them are going to move around all the time.
Yeah, you have
People,
dead angles. Like
Yeah.
imagine yourself like going after work, sitting on the chair or in a bed. You're not going to watch like these angles.
Yeah.
yeah, and people watch content like this when they're in their bed, when they're
Hmm.
in their pajamas on the weekends or after the long working days. So we implemented 180, and when I say 180, it really is. It at least looks to me like 120 degrees
Mhm.
because it has this limited
Hmm.
angle that you can look around. So we really played with that. We made a pilot episode for like our original animated show called Mentor,
Hmm.
and that's something that turned out really great as a pilot project. We
Mhm.
actually then whole process that we made for like creating those 180 videos,
Hmm.
we actually filed a provisional patent for that
Wow.
because it is that process is patentable,
Hmm.
and that is something that we like see the future is both for like animated shows, both Western style,
Hmm.
both like East Asian style and stuff like that. So we are exploring that.
That open up like a new window of opportunities.
Mhm.
Since then, we were at the TechCrunch, talked with people. Couple of Japanese companies saw it and really liked the technology, and like let's try to do some uh, anime in this
Yeah.
style. So we are in process of like negotiation.
Hmm.
We're doing a couple of lesser known
Hmm.
uh, animes, but yeah, it opened a lot of door with just like constant research and development, figuring out new
Mhm.
stuff, and
Yeah, and I
when
think I think that's so important. I think a lot of times when it comes to starting a business, everyone thinks you have to have everything ready before you start. Like, okay, I need to know who our market is, what's going on. But
Mhm.
I'm gonna say 99 out of 100 times, if not every 100 time, what your initial plan is changes within the first few months. Once you start talking to customers, working with people, you realize very quickly you can be completely off. I know so many people who start businesses who is like, hey, this is where I'm going. This is the industry, and end up in a completely different place. Because as you're saying, is the best market research is entering the market. Like when you're trying to sell something is when you start getting the real answers. When you're like,
Yeah.
hey, can I have money? And they say no, you're like, okay, now I need to change something. I think a lot of times people think it's like, oh, someone said they were interested. Yay, it's free money. And then you realize, okay, now when you ask for money, they start they start backing up. They're like, wait, whoa,
Yeah,
whoa,
yeah,
whoa. This is not
yeah.
what I need this, I need this. So I think it's very smart that and enter the business kind of saying, hey, this is where we have a mission, we have a vision, but
Hmm.
let's look at other industries. Let's look at different avenues. Because I like how you said you were touching on even using marketing. I know, like, same thing with ads. I feel a lot of times marketing or advertising can sometimes be early adopters for new mediums, just
Hmm.
because they're all trying to get the highest click through rate. They're all competing for that extra 1%. That extra 1% can be worth millions. So it's so important. And it's also funny how you said you went from music to ads, and also now looking at overseas and even Japanese content using your 180 technology. So is is there a big difference between, for the 180, or I guess 120, and the 360? Is there a difference in how long things take to create because you only have to show half the world? And or
Uh-huh.
what are some of the bigger differences between the two? Like, you're right. When I was watching 360 content, I'm only ever watching one view because I am lying down or on a couch. I'm not spitting around. But at the same time, you can scroll around. So, kind of, what have you seen? Where do the two fit?
Yeah, well, something like with 360, what we did like in the
Mhm.
beginning, we break down the idea, and like when we went to the storyboard, like we tried to imagine what will be like the left and the
Mhm.
right and what will be in the back, and we had like a more than a few discussions about
Mhm.
that. But when we landed after that, when we saw like the whole process that we did in 360, like you remember like
Mhm.
storyboard, previz, and so on, like we were like, okay, stop there. Like we have previz, right? We have like this 2D stuff that's moving. Why don't we try like do like use these 2D characters like with animation in 3D space? We
Mhm.
were like, okay, that this sounds interesting, right? Can we do it? Yeah, we can. We started experimenting with Unreal Engine, with
Mhm.
Photoshop, which and where we can import and export and so on. And after a couple of iterations, we were like, okay, this is interesting. Now, what shall we do about directing? Because you know the problem with 360 is that fixed frame is like in some, if you're not from the background,
Mhm.
like that you have a background in games, in movies and stuff like that, for a typical user the frame will be always be gone, right,
Mhm.
in 360. So we were like, okay, how can we expand this by doing less? And we were like,
Hmm.
okay, 180 animated stuff. Okay, can we combine those 2D elements with 3D elements and start doing like fixed frames
Mhm.
that are like expand a little, but that can have like, when we have one shot of like car moving, and we were
Mhm.
like, this could be interesting, like from left to right people will like hear the sound and be
Mhm.
like, and that was something like we're still figuring out what can be really really useful
Mhm.
in this technology, but we found out that actually nobody did it somehow before us.
Yeah.
And we will keep doing it.
Yeah, what's really interesting, like creating more by doing less.
Mhm.
We never really we gave phone to people to see how they like interact with stuff, and you see them always. They see that they can move around. They
Mhm.
move to a totally like different angle,
Yeah.
and they can't find where the story is happening for the full time.
Yeah.
It was the main problem with 360. And what was really interesting is I remember we were showing that to
Mhm.
someone. It was like a Mr. Memo video.
Mhm.
A little bit of a context, like Mr. Memo was a marketing video we did Mr. Memo is a novelty pen, which is from the 90s, and they wanted to revive it.
Mhm.
And
Sell me a pen.
yeah, is there anything more American than selling
Yeah.
a pen? So it was only logical that we
Mhm.
embrace it. We created all these funny characters around Mr. Memo. It was a Mr.
Mhm.
Pam, and it was a Penelope, and it was a story about how Mr. Memo Pen
Mhm.
is saving Penelope. Really funny.
And we had a great time actually because Mr. Memo is kind of scary,
Mhm.
but somehow they think it's cool, and we were like, how can we enhance this character to be like cool but not that scary?
Yeah.
Like we need to build these characters around him,
Mhm.
and somehow we succeeded.
Yeah,
Had a great time at
Mm-hmm.
round table doing the storyboard and stuff.
but what does it all matter if you spend whole the video looking at the chair
Mhm.
in like
True.
the other part of the world because you can find the main scene, and that was like the main thought process that led us.
Yeah, but actually Memo was interesting because it was one of the first projects where I was insisting like let's do like just one cutscene,
Mhm.
nothing more. Don't cut it like through storyboard. Do just one cutscene because then you will have the time for people to explore, to move around it, but then back, to the frame stuff and see where the story is. So that's kind of where we started thinking maybe a little bit more about like let's do something that's more fixated on the narrative.
Yeah, and other thing is that also where 360 is good is in the places where you want people the freedom to explore
Mhm.
more. So you really need, I think, to have like a light story going on,
Yeah,
similar to showreel that we did,
yeah.
because where you like follow one character
Yeah.
and he explores you around, and that is in like 360. That is where you really use the space as a medium to like tell the story. You use more of the space and less of the things happening in your screen. But 180 is really interesting because you're using that main frame, you're using things you would use in like traditional video, but you have all this extra space to throw in some interesting things. Because you could watch Mentor or 180 video like without moving your phone, and you would get stuff. But you would have more enhanced experience if you would watch it otherwise. That leaves you, imagine this, you're creating an animated show, and like you have this extended frame, you have this extended world. Like you will tell everything in your main frame, give a little bit of incentives to users to move their phone or computers, but imagine what you can do in the parts that people usually don't look at.
Yeah.
What sorts of Easter eggs could you leave all around and increase actually the value of that video, because it can be rewatched and you can like watch it the first time, then watch it again and see all the things you missed, put up the puzzles. It's really interesting.
Yeah, what's really funny what you touched on is the thing every time I work with a UX, UI, or user interface designers, they always say you always want to make your product for like your simplest user or like your dumbest user, and then dumbest user until you give it to someone, you realize it's much worse than you thought. And I always find that's the case. And everything, even when it comes to like a sales process, I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. It's an easy sale, or anything is when you give it to someone, you're like, why are you doing it? Like, why are you holding it? Like, what? And it's so funny. And if you haven't worked in that world before, you think it's super simple. You're like, okay, I'm at a button here. They're going to click it. It says there's a big arrow. And half the time you realize they're not using your content or the medium as you expect. And I always find it is a big challenge. People don't realize. And like you're saying, testing along the way is so important because you create the best story until you realize, oh, they're looking at the complete wrong direction because a bird's flying and they got distracted, or the opposite where you learned very early on that most users aren't moving around. So trying to have a story behind them doesn't add that value.
Yeah.
One thing you did touch on that is I think super important is that understanding what your value your medium brings. So like creating a 3D, 360 content, it should be thought of as 360 content. It's very hard, I think, a lot of times to say, okay, we're going to have a 2D content and make it 3D because there's not a lot of value added there. The idea should be, okay, we're making a 3D world and now we're going to use this to create the content. I think that's a differentiation that's pretty hard. And I think early on in VR, when it came to video games, that was a big issue as well. They're like, okay, we're going to take a normal game and make it 3D. And they learned very quickly that there's not much value added because the assets weren't like the intention wasn't there. And the same with making a movie. If you're not intending or thinking in 3D, then you're
Hmm.
very hard to bring extra value on. I mean, you even saw in movies when the 3D became super popular, and initially it was just like arms going out of the screen early in the movies with like the Spy Kids, and then you had Avatar, which
Yeah,
realized our medium's 3D. We're filming it meant for 3D, and you
yeah,
got the more value. And I
yeah.
like your idea of rewatch. It's so important to have those Easter eggs and kind of have the
Mhm.
part of the story a bit more. That's super interesting.
It's difficult sometimes to like we had also like discussions about that. How can you make this medium more cinematic, right,
Hmm.
than like just a filler of some game?
Hmm.
Because most of the people will have like that first feeling like, oh, this is interesting game, let's look all around. So how can you like enhance that with
Hmm.
some movie elements? And then we started thinking about like, okay, let's start like let's go through history,
Hmm.
like let's see like what Beatles did like in I'm Walrus, how they break the editing, how they break the narrative, what angles they used, and how all these like interesting artists always they were always trying to break the wall
Hmm.
with something new. But now with 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 the presumption of
Mhm.
consuming everything and so on, you can make mistakes.
Hmm.
It's all available now. Now you can just go and look like the data,
Hmm.
which is cool. It can be frustrating, like you said, when you like do that thing where you're like, oh no, you're not doing it right. They're doing it right. We are doing it wrong.
Hmm.
That's basically what's where is the key about making something successful. But I also came from the music where I learned over the years the less is more.
Hmm.
Even it everyone is talking about it, but nobody like is doing it, right? But like if you see like the top producers from Max Martin
Hmm.
and like everyone else, they're doing just a couple of layers of sound, but they're doing it really well.
Hmm.
So I would say that's something that could be used in any medium.
Hmm. And I think that's so important. And the idea is having the high quality and then adding stuff on. I
Mhm.
think for a lot of times when it came to newer technologies, people always try to push the boundaries too fast where there's not much value. So it's like, okay, I need, I have all this space. I need to fill it out with everything. I need to be the top of the top. And then you realize, maybe if your story isn't good, no one really cares. And it becomes one of
Yeah.
those things like you're saying where, and maybe initially they look around and then afterwards, if there isn't entertaining assets or storyboarding for the rest of the scene, they're not going to end up looking. So I do think it's so important to test and kind of work, like you said, work your way from the bottom and then work your way up, adding more and more to create, at the end of the day, like you said, it's creating value for the viewer. And that's the most important thing. And I mean, that was a great line what you said. We're not doing, they're not doing it wrong. We're doing it wrong. And realizing that if your user doesn't know how to use the software or get value from it, you can't tell them they're wrong. No one's
Yeah.
gonna pay for something just to say, oh, I guess I was wrong. I'm gonna just relearn how I do everything. And
True.
it sounds so silly for a lot of people. They're like, what do you mean? Like my users gonna know how to do this. It's so great, but like you touch on, I mean, through this whole conversation is testing along the way and seeing how people use your product gives you so much more information. You could spend hours researching and hours researching, and then once it's in someone's hand, it could be completely different. And I think that's why it's so important. So, you
Yeah.
initially started off in the music, kind of working more with video and creating more content. What
Mhm.
does like the 5-year plan look like? Where do you really see the industry going, and kind of where do you see the business going?
Philip can answer this, but I just wanted to say, like,
Mhm.
before this conversation, we were testing the Watchroom, our like next project that we
Mhm.
want to like to do,
Mhm.
and Philip can like
Yeah.
Mhm.
brief you more about it and our
Yeah.
like plan for like next like 5 years.
This is a really great question because
Mhm.
at the beginning of the talk,
Mhm.
talk I said something that I think is crucial,
Mhm.
and that is that really our like vision lies in exploring unexplored
Mhm.
charts of the video itself. So
Mhm.
like 360 and 180 was the first step. But the great thing about seeing how people consume the video and how communities around the video perceive it is that we learned some other things outside of the VR realm that could be enchanted and
Okay.
enchanted. Yes. So right now we are working on a project called Watchroom, which is our next step, which is actually based around our. It is based around our let's call it philosophy
Mhm.
of going out and like putting things on the market fast, testing them, and iterating upon that. We know that we want to solve the two crucial problems that we see in videos. So to give you a little bit of context, people usually like to go and find other people that they don't know, and they speak about a certain topic, and then they discuss and they become the good friends. We see that in video games with like clans and guilds. We see it on conferences, through work and stuff. And really, one of the things that you can discuss days and night is the video content, movies and series and anime shows and stuff like that. But really, everything out there, from the solutions, from forums and
Mhm.
groups, really doesn't give you the deep and the
Yeah.
experience. So we are really on a quest to solve and give the deeper experience to consuming the content, and to help people actually find like-minded individuals to together work on and actually become closer through working together and interacting. So that is what Watchroom is all about. We built like a scrappy MVP, and
Mhm.
every MVP in like every term we like build it in 5 days,
Yeah.
and we like want to test the most minimal hypothesis we found, and we'll be launching it actually in 2 days.
Oh
So
wow.
it will probably be
Yeah,
out.
we can send you the link.
We
Oh,
can
for
send you the
sure.
link.
For sure.
It will be out once
Mhm.
podcast is out. Basically, the initial solution is really simple. We help people come to a common space 1 hour after they watched the premiere of a new anime or a new movie, and come and discuss it through like voice and have good discussions about that.
Mhm.
That is our first step toward that goal. So Watchroom as a platform, and in 5 years we want to develop a new platform where people can consume content, can discuss about content, can find like-minded individuals that like same stuff,
Mhm.
and together interact and shape that content and shape that community, and actually have the deeper immersion with the
Yeah.
video.
More fulfilled experience at the end.
Yeah.
That.
So in 5 years, the way we see
Mhm.
we see the industry, like no one can tell, because things change so fast.
Mhm.
I think there will be much more of animated content out there.
Mhm.
I'm really a firm believer in animation.
Mhm.
Actually, uh, I know, because I like metal music, and I know how subcultures are
Important.
important, and I see the animation becoming a subculture of younger people,
Mhm.
like Gen Zs, and it's really
Well,
neglected.
it's evolving actually from subculture, like everything good. It's
Yeah.
like producers went in 80s and 90s, see a local band that's like killing it out there for like 100 people or something like that, and they were like, let's try to bring them to bigger crowd,
Mhm.
and so, and it went right. So it's similar like anime.
Yeah,
The only
and in general, like when you see anime, when you see all Western animation, it's really growing on Gen Zs. I
Mhm.
think it's becoming cultural. You see like people all around with profile pics from the different shows.
Mhm.
So I really think that is becoming a new culture,
Mhm.
and a lot of advertisers are neglecting that, in a sense, like it's not explainer video is not part of that
Mhm.
culture, like really embracing it to the core with all its positives and negatives.
Mhm.
So I can see that really broadening in the
Mhm.
next couple of years in the industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even Netflix and
Mhm.
Amazon and every streaming service. Look how much animes are they like publishing right
Mhm.
now, and it's becoming it's becoming rapidly. Like every week, I
Mhm.
see like 10 or 20 new animes out there.
It is interesting how I would always think like, oh, special effects are so good now, like people are gonna move away from animation, but it's complete opposite. animation,
Yeah.
I think, is now more popular than ever. And especially within North America, like the anime, the Japanese style of animation and that content. And I think it's probably through Netflix and through the, I guess, I'd probably say maybe COVID as well, having like 10,000 episodes to watch, like it holds people's attention a lot more and you can
Literally.
create a lot more. And it's so interesting because I remember when in university, I downloaded like all the Dragon Ball Z episodes. I think there was like
Uh-huh.
1,000 and I broke
Yeah.
my school's internet because it said I downloaded like 10 terabytes of video. But it was one of those things where it was, I think, a new medium that's been around forever, but for North American audience, it's like brand new to them, and the content's so good, so it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I think that younger generations don't want to see like fake stuff.
mhm,
They want to see a good story. I think it's not a cliche
mhm,
at the end, because what you said about effects is 100% sure. You can have all these like Transformer movies and stuff, and it's cool because you're watching it because of the effects,
mhm.
right? Like that episode of Michael Bay in South Park. Like
Yeah,
I don't see the difference. Yeah. So but it's true at the end, like people will go and be more immersed with the good story, even if it's like not so perfectly drawn, or something else. You give him like give him time for a
mhm,
good story, and it will unveil
mhm.
itself. And sometimes, as the anime goes, it's all a slow burner.
Yeah,
Hmm.
It's different kind of content than movies and
mhm,
everything else, but it's at the same time, as the time goes, you become more and more immersed. Philip actually, what are we watching? Naruto
Yeah.
Shippuden right now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're at the final arc of
mhm,
that stuff. So he watched it actually, and like, and he showed it to me, and like now we're watching it.
mhm,
Even if we're thinking like of different forms, like it's 20 minutes per episode, we're thinking like for us, Quibi was the company. Maybe
mhm.
you heard of it.
Yeah,
That like for the short content and stuff like that, something like that. It's really interesting for the Generation Z.
mhm,
But where they made a mistake is that they tried to bring Hollywood actors to younger
mhm.
generations, and younger generations don't care about
Yeah.
that phony stuff and stuff like that. So that's like socializing the video content also at the moment. That's something that's interesting for me personally.
And
So
I think what's really interesting, especially for younger generations, even myself, I found like
Hmm.
YouTube. I watch more YouTube than I watch Netflix or anything else. And like who I'd consider a celebrity would not be conventional celebrity, be a YouTuber I follow because I'm watching literally hours a day of their content, which you can never. I could watch all of Leonardo DiCaprio's movies probably in a week, but I can't watch the
yeah,
10,000 YouTube videos and podcasts these content creators make. And like you
yeah,
were saying with Watchroom thing you're developing is having that community. Like there's a comment section
yeah,
and people can meet people in the comment section and interact. And I think that is the big difference where one of the big shifts we've seen is that you don't need a 4K camera for people to watch. Like people really care about the story and being a part of something and watching with a small community, which I think has been a shock in the movie world as well. We've seen a lot of people hire these YouTube stars, try to make it into like these big motion picture films. A lot of times they doesn't work because, like we were saying, the format's different. People don't care if there's special effects. They want to hear a person's story, want to be involved with it. And I think
yeah.
that's the biggest thing that you're really touching on is that as time goes on, people, it's almost not reversing, but like people are caring more about the story because that is what it's really differentiates you because everyone has good cameras. Everyone nowadays, like animation is obviously there's still quality to it, but it's not like there's so many animations out there. So now people are like, okay, how can I be different and have a good story rather than just have this cooler special effect because it gets boring very fast. So I like how you were touching on the community a lot of people are starting to care about now, which is I think 10 years ago really didn't exist. People didn't really feel like there was a community for a show. And now it's cool to be a part of a new anime. Like, oh, hey, I watched this before it was dubbed in English. I was that. I'm
Yeah.
different than you. There's so many options. I think that is something that will for sure keep growing as time goes on. And I think with organizations like yourself trying to have a new medium for people to interact, to grow, and kind of be that new frontier is going to be so important. Um, Such a unique time for sure. I think with this different
Yeah.
medium platforms compared to the past.
Yeah. We definitely think that, and we also like see that like big companies are slowly moving into it. I
Mhm,
saw that. I didn't watch it, but I saw like
Mhm.
the Star Wars have
mhm,
like new animated series
mhm,
that did with like collaboration with Japanese studios,
mhm,
which is really interesting. I can't wait to watch it, like to see like this. I think it's, is it 8 or 9 episodes, different styles of drawing,
mhm,
animation and stuff like that, but in familiar universe, right? Star Wars.
mhm,
So like I just want to see like where, what did they mix, like
mhm,
did they mix a little bit of Kurosawa or
mhm,
something like that, because they all love him as a director. And yeah, I also think like that it's moving. It's cycle. It's probably like cyclic.
yeah,
What's the right
cyclical.
word? Cyclical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cyclical. Everything is like when you like also watch the history. The video started with short forms,
Mhm,
and now again, 100 years after, we have TikTok, which
mhm,
is a short form. And if you like made like split screen left and right, what was like one of the first videos and
mhm.
what is TikTok, it's pretty similar at the end.
And I think that's so true. It's that like everything comes and goes. And I mean, I felt early on, I think when TikTok first came out, everyone was like, oh, this is just for children. Like no one cares about this. And then now I talk to some people who work in the industries and they're like, TikTok actually has for advertising one of the best user retentions and like click through
Yeah,
rates of anything. So I think it's
yeah,
like anything where like whatever initially people are like, oh, like only kids use it, but then realize kids are who buy stuff. So it's one of those things I think you got to
yeah,
be it's I
yeah,
think it's especially being an entrepreneur, it's like every medium it's worth taking a look at and being kind of putting your opinions aside. I think that's so important is okay, I initially thought TikTok was not that entertaining. I'm like, it's not for me, whatever, because initially the content wasn't geared towards my
yeah,
generation or my interests. Now every YouTuber I follow, every business I follow has a TikTok that is, like you said, just a different medium that I get the information from. And my mom is not sending me TikToks. It's one of those things I think where
wow.
it's one of those things I think where it's early on, like all it's very important to like pay attention to what's happening because you can't really predict the future. But whatever has the masses interested is really what's going to be the next medium.
Yeah.
So I guess it was great to connect. If people want to learn more about the business, follow more about the story, what's the best way to visit, get in touch, or kind of learn a bit more?
Yeah, I think the best way is to go to Immersive for You website.
Mhm,
But I think the other better way is to actually contact us directly.
mhm,
So you can find us on LinkedIn, but
mhm,
we can also tell you our emails, which
mhm,
I
Yeah,
think is
sure.
fine. And like we answer to all emails, we
mhm,
promise. So anyone can write to us if you want to discuss.
mhm,
If you want to discuss things with us or just share your opinions, that it's perfectly fine. We like working with people, learning from people.
mhm.
So it's Philip and Dusan, like FILIP at toimmersiveforyou.com. And
It's for you.
yeah, it's for you. And for Dusan is DUSAN
AM.
at toimmersiveforyou.com. So basically,
2 and 4 are numbers.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'll include the links below as well for your emails and stuff to get in contact. But yeah, no, it was great chatting. And I think really do think that this new form of medium is essentially now about to take off as the technology is there. And now more
mhm,
people are looking for unique ways to keep growing. Let's
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
definitely. We're looking forward, for the future.
Mhm,
Even some things Philip said to me like before the interview. Also, like the guy that created no coding website. Like who was it?
Yeah,
Like
I don't remember the name, but after Dreamweaver, they were like before Wix and
mhm,
Squarespace. They were like first solution for that no
mhm,
code website and stuff. And like when they were pitching, they were pitching on a stage. Founder of Meetup told them on a stage, "This is most like stupid idea I ever heard. Because why would anyone not code the website
mhm,
if they don't know how to code it? They don't need it." And as you can see, as you can see today, like Wix and Squarespace are really great solutions used by a lot of people because the customer really isn't the developer. The
mhm,
customer is someone who wants to get their business off the ground fast without any internet knowledge.
Mhm.
And like Canva is the similar case. It's for non-designers and stuff like that. So it is all around finding like a new solutions for not so obvious things in the
Mhm.
industry, and really focusing on a problem. And that is philosophy that we really have adopted, and we are enjoying the process. What can I say more?